The Kremlin has just responded after these Ukraine peace talks between Russia and the United States ended without a breakthrough. In the last couple of minutes, the Kremlin said that Vladimir Putin had accepted some things but rejected others as unacceptable. And it would be wrong to say that President Putin had rejected America's plan following what the Kremlin described as a first exchange of opinions. And we're also just getting some news in regards to Ukraine's response to that. President Zelenskyy saying that Ukraine will work constructively to achieve peace and that their negotiators are in Brussels for further talks today. That's the latest from Ukraine. So still talking about talks, but ultimately no breakthrough. And it all follows, of course, 5 hours of discussions yesterday. The US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, had told reporters that the meeting between President Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, had proved to be productive, but that more work was still needed. And earlier yesterday, Vladimir Putin had accused Europe of blocking the path to peace, saying that Russia is not planning to go to war with Europe, but if Europe wants conflict, that Russia is ready right now. Well, this morning, NATO foreign ministers are meeting in Brussels with the latest developments top of the diplomatic agenda. And a short time ago, we heard from our Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, who accused Vladimir Putin of seeking to escalate the war.
We have seen in recent days President Trump and the US pursue a just and lasting peace for Ukraine and for the Ukrainian people, and for President Zelenskyy to pursue their willingness for a ceasefire and for a just and lasting peace for Ukraine. But instead, what we have seen is President Putin simply seek to escalate war. And we've seen over the weekend the continuing strikes, the heavy strikes that have led to power being switched off for hundreds of thousands of people. And that is why today I'm announcing the UK's additional £10 million to support energy infrastructure repairs in Ukraine, because whilst President Putin is seeking to switch the lights off and plunge Ukraine into darkness, we will continue to work to switch the lights back on.
Meanwhile, NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte has reacted to the talks in Moscow, but would not be drawing on comments that Vladimir Putin made about Europe yesterday.
The peace talks are ongoing. That's good, but at the same time we have to make sure that whilst they take place, and we are not sure when they will end, that Ukraine is in the strongest possible position to keep the fight going, to fight back against the Russians, but also in the strongest possible position when peace talks. I'm not going to react to everything Putin is saying. We have seen him in military clothes, dressed like a soldier at the front, but not at the front. It was quite far from the front the day before yesterday. So no, I'm not going to react to everything.
Well, our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, now has the latest from Ukraine.
Well, I don't think anyone here was expecting any breakthrough, and let's face it, Ukraine was not in the room, so there was never going to be any actual decisive deal coming out. There was nervousness because, of course, Ukraine really views Steve Witkoff with suspicion. They believe that he is far more wooed by the Russian side than the Ukrainian side, and you can only look at his travel that really underlines that. He's been to Moscow 6 times this year. He hasn't been to Ukraine once. Yes, he's met with senior Ukrainian officials and the president as Ukraine tries to make sure that its voice is heard. But unless Ukraine is agreeing to a deal will not happen because this country is still fighting. And I've been down in the Donbass for a couple of days and speaking to soldiers there, and I can tell you they are in no mood to surrender land. Yes, they're exhausted. Yes, they really want to see peace, but they say that they've sacrificed so much defending their land, and while they are still losing territory, they are also fighting back. The UK, right from the beginning, has been one of the strongest backers for Ukraine. You've had, under Boris Johnson, there was the UK coming first, giving, you'll remember, those anti-tank missiles. They also gave artillery guns. They were really pushing to get European allies as well to go further, faster with tanks, with long-range missiles. You'll remember the Storm Shadow cruise missiles. But the problem is there's a reality check here. The UK, like much of the rest of Europe, since the end of the Cold War, took a peace dividend, hollowed out its own armed forces. And so there is only a limit to what the UK is now able to give. It's given most of its actual stockpiles of weapons that it had ready on the shelf to give to Ukraine to fight. And yes, there are efforts to galvanise production across the whole of Europe in terms of weapons. But many defence insiders that I speak to are very worried that Keir Starmer's government is going far too slowly when it comes to responding to the challenge being posed by Russia, not just in Ukraine, but to the whole of Europe. Like, just look at those hybrid attacks that are going on with mysterious drone sightings and sabotage and suggestions that Russia could be involved. It's a very hostile time.